day is done. We are headed back home yet again. Big news. So, athlete that joined 6 weeks ago, Margaret, she joined 6 weeks out from USA Masters Weightlifting Association, USMWA, not USAW, the other corporation there is now. She joined 6 weeks out from nationals of that company. So the big question on the table was, all right, cool. 6 weeks, like, happy to have you, but realistically, like, you may not PR at this meet because just whole new coach, whole new systems, you've got to learn your body, we got to learn your technique. Like, there's a whole bunch of learning process that happens where we may hit some PRs in 6 weeks. We may still be just kind of like trial and error some things, just see how our body's actually working. So went into that, was really hoping we're gonna have some PRs. Would not have been super surprised if we didn't, if we hit some big numbers but didn't PR, just again, because it's a whole new situation, especially if you've been with an old coach for a while, you made that switch, big old learning adjustment on both ends. However, even with a flash flood in Louisiana and her time slot being pushed back like 8 to 10 hours, something like that, something very crazy. She came out and got 3 American records and 1 gold. 1 gold in her weight class and then 1 best overall women's 65 lifter. So she came out, missed her opener snatch, went 5 for 6. So that second and third snatch was American records, 33, then 35. And then her last clean and jerk was 43. That was a PR, at least competition. And then that 78 kilo total was an American record as well. So walked away with 3 total records, a triple gold medal, best lifter award by Sinclair, and just a whole lot of fucking confidence leaving that meet. So we are going to be riding that train now for a month, hit up Pan Ams. So basically another big stretch, and then from there we got a very long stretch to get a hell of a lot stronger, build up a hell of a lot more before that next meet, which I believe is in December. So big start to last night. I keep saying it, we have been on a roll of like 5 or 6 like perfect meets, like where every single person, we go with the goal, they hit basically exactly that goal, doing the best they can. We haven't had any meets, at least of my athletes, where shit has gone bad, like where we just missed completely. So I'm a little worried that streak is gonna have to end at some point, but the streak has not been broken yet. Getting into weightlifting, I didn't really have a great segue for that today. I went, 2 for 5 this week on segways, 2 for 4 this week on segways. We'll try again tomorrow. Cues are very overused in weightlifting and just in lifting in general. If you have to give your athlete more than 1 to 2 cues for an exercise, then you have done poor exercise selection. If you have to tell your athlete 3, 4, 5 different things for them to focus on, the cues are not going to help. It is not a matter of, oh, the athlete just needs to do it better. It's a matter of you as a coach did a piss poor job choosing the exercises. We need to choose exercises that target a specific deficiency, but at the same time, it needs to be something that the athlete can actually execute. If you're going out onto the stage, I tell every single one of my athletes, like, hey, these last 2 weeks of comp prep and that actual day of comp, like, I don't give a shit what your technique looks like. Like, don't really even think about it, just brain off, execute. Because when you get onto that competition platform, the lights are on you, the crowd is around you, there's a lot of fucking pressure on the line. It is just you out there with 3 people and then a whole crowd staring you down. Your brain's gonna turn off whether you want it to or not. You're gonna go completely blank. You are not gonna have time or the awareness to focus on any cues. Your brain's gonna shut off and it's just gonna be a matter of execute. So we need to get athletes to that point where we can just get them to purely execute. Because if we give them 1 or 2 cues, sure, you can remind them of that while they walk up on the platform, they can focus on that, boom, we're gonna go. When we start adding in too many cues, too many things to focus on, you are gonna have more of a breakdown of technique and that getting worse rather than it getting better. If there is only so many things we can focus on. We know that the brain is not good at multitasking. those people who think they're good at multitasking are actually really good at just switching between activities very quickly. That's not multitasking. That is still the brain has to switch over. So if we're trying to focus on one or two things, brain switches over. Okay, that's quick. We can do that pretty easy. Heels down, drive up, boom. Super simple. We start adding in 3, 4, 5 different cues. That brain is going to start to shut down. You're going to be focusing on so many things. Your lift is going to start changing from what you want it to be. You're going to slow down. And if you're slowing down because you're trying to hit 5 different positions, actively focusing on it, your lift, which should be like half a millisecond, 3/4 of a millisecond long, like it is not a very long lift. If you're adding on a whole 0.1, 0.2 milliseconds there, 0.2 seconds right there, so 10, 100, 300 milliseconds, that is enough time that's going to slow you down completely, cause you to miss positions, cause you to just fucking miss the lift. So we are, coaches in general, and athletes too, are just trying to focus on way too many things. If we cannot give the athlete an exercise that puts them in position to fix most of the things, and then we cue on specific things, then we're doing them a disservice and they're not really getting great coaching out of it. So we need to give athletes exercises that put them in positions that will naturally fix most of their technique, most of their errors. And then from there, we hyper-fix it on like some specifics, like, hey, drive up a little bit more on this. Like, you're doing good there, just add a little bit extra to whatever on that. So for example, I have someone doing snatch pulls to a height. So they're doing a snatch high pull, but there's a PVC at about nipple height, and they have to actively hit that PVC every single time. So the goal there is active through the arms immediately after the hip. So the arms can start pulling the second we explode from that hip. So I don't have to tell her to, hey, after you extend, drive with those arms. That is going to come across simply because if you want to hit that height, you're going to have to use your arms at some point. If that bar gets heavy enough, at some point your legs cannot just get it up there. You have to pull with your arms. So I don't have to cue that because it's simply, that is the task. The only way to complete the task is by doing it using your arms. Same thing for hundreds of different exercises. If the athlete really struggles with getting the knees under, and we just really want to hone in on that, where our knees should be after we pass the kneecap, put them from the blocks, put them from the hang, put them in something where you do not have to cue where their knees go. They get to set up in a position where their body is already perfectly placed. So you do not have to, there is no cue of, hey, get set up like this, make sure your knees go like this. Put them in a position, vary the exercise selection that puts them in the place where they can be successful. Cues, again, should be limited to 1 to 2. Like, even 2 is going to be kind of a lot. Like, that is a lot to focus on, especially if you are doing more than like just a couple words. Like, I try to keep every single one of my cues to like 4 words or less, typically like 1, or if I can get like 2 or 3 words, that is a very good mnemonic. Mnemonic meaning it's just very easy to remember. So like Jessie King loves this one where I tell her to hit the tip. That is just a way of keeping it close. So fucking close that you almost hit yourself in the tip. Hit the tip. It rhymes. Very good mnemonic right there. Very good at helping you remember. Very kinesthetic. So it's really targeting where you should be at in your body versus telling you, hey, I want you to drive that bar up and keep it as close as you can. Use your elbows, use your arms to pull it in, drive straight up. It's a lot of words. That's really kind of like very broad and hard to picture. Like, all right, push up, pull up, keep close, versus, hey, hit yourself in the tip. So we not only need to do good exercise selection that helps our athletes be in better positions so we don't have to cue as much. So using exercises to basically skip out on some cues that we have to do because they're in a better position. But we also need to be a lot more tactile. That's the word I wanted to use. A lot more tactile with our cues. So when we say things that are very broad, very scientific, like, all right, when you pass the knees, I want your knee, or as we're doing the pull, I want your knees to come back the second you hit your patella and knees come under. That is a lot to think about. That's a lot of anatomy to think through too. Like that's just a shit ton of stuff. Instead, something like, hey, scoop your knees under. How do you scoop your knees under? Well, you have to let your butt drop a little bit. You have to dip your knees under, scoot your knees under, get that double knee bend in order to go straight up. exact same thing. Like those are both cueing the exact same fucking thing. However, one requires a hell of a lot more brain power. Having that first one where it's that giant long sentence, like focus on this, do this. That's so much, you're not gonna get that cue in because you are just so fucking scatterbrained on what you're trying to focus on. Do this, versus something simple, hit the tit, scoop the knee, something catchy, something mnemonic, something that can get that light bulb to brighten in your athlete's brain so that they can actually make the changes you want. The more words you add, the more cues you add, the more confusing you make it, the more they have to think about their body versus something more tactile, the harder it's gonna be for it to actually get across the brain of what you want your athlete to do. So at the end of the day, we need better exercise selection that makes us use less cues. So that when we are using cues, we can be a lot better with those cues. If we can put an athlete into a position where we don't have to use 2 to 3 cues, we now only have one big thing to focus on, there's a much higher chance that we can actually get the athlete to do what we want them to do. Because now, again, instead of 4 things, we are only focusing on one big thing. The exercise selection takes care of the other 3. Boom, problem solved. Now we just hammer hone on one specific thing. We progress along the continuum. We continue to focus on that, put them in more exercises that help focus on those positions, cue a couple things, boom, and we are solid. So stop cueing so much and just focus on better exercise selection and better, more mnemonic, more tactile cues.